And welcome to the City of Sydney's Reboot series for 2024. I'm Tracy Hamilton. And before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, traditional owners of the land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, as well as acknowledging that we're all here today on different lands and to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from wherever you join us today. Kia ora, I'm dialing in today from Moramai. Lovely to see you. I'm Tracy Hamilton of innovation consultancy Disruptors Co. And I'm delighted to be hosting this series brought to you today by the City of Sydney and supported by Service New South Wales Business Connect. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Great to see some familiar names and faces popping into the feed now. Welcome. We are at the top of our series today, the penultimate episode. The city originally developed this series to support businesses, to help them recover, to rebuild, to engage, and to grow their customers and revenue in response to the pandemic. Now, here we are, 4 years on, and we're still helping business. But this year, we've really focused our efforts on digging in to really important business topics for small businesses to help support your growth needs with a good eye on things like emerging technology, social media, digital skills, even a smattering of AI, and our series of weekly masterclasses with some of Australia's leading business experts have helped build those knowledge blocks. I know that you've enjoyed hearing from speakers like Emma LaRosa on growing digital channels. That was one of my personal faves. Kelly Slesser on e-commerce, Izzy Whitlick on AI, and I personally really enjoyed Tom Dawkins last week. If you're able to tune in to learn more about emerging business models like social enterprise and co-ops, great new learning. Now, I know you're excited to hear more about this week's theme and to learn about resilience, but yes, here we are, 9 weeks in, and for those of you who always ask the same question, what are we going to do and how do I catch up and when do I get the notes? Every week we record Reboot, and so there's already a catalogue of the previous 8 episodes sitting there for your viewing pleasure. If you registered for today's session, within the next 48 hours, not only will you receive a copy of today's webinar as a digital recording, you're also going to get some of the key outtakes. So I'd encourage you to stay posted and track that inbox for this great content. And if you have missed one of the episodes, please jump back in via the City of Sydney website, look for Reboot 2024 and dig into some of this goodness. Now, here we are. As I said, 9 episodes in all, and each week we've been here on Tuesdays between 12 and 1 AEST time, and we have 3 sprints. Sprint 1 is called Run, and this is where we've covered off things like social media, e-commerce, and AI, really the beginnings of getting started and running your business. The next 3 sessions were called Grow, and they're about the early stages and medium term of growing business. So we talked about diversity, leveraging loyalty to create sales traction, an excellent session on cybersecurity and mapping out risk with our friend Cole Cornford. And then last week, we started to turn that corner. Here we are. We're about the navigation and the skills you might need to adapt when it comes to running a business in the face of change. And so, as I said, each session is anchored by an incredible business expert and leader. And today we're going to be welcoming entrepreneur and founder James MacDonald to share his insight into resilience and what it's taken to navigate growth for his business. Now, before I pass over to James, I've got a few little bits of admin which hopefully will help everyone out. Down the bottom there on your Zoom tab is a button which is called Q&A. If you've got any questions for us, jump in, write your question, and at the end of today's webinar, James and I will be having a chat about your burning questions. So really keen to grab those from you. If you've got a question, note it down. You'll also be getting your event summary. So this is a recorded webinar. So as I mentioned, you'll get a link with the recording, plus the summary and some key takeaways. And finally, at the very end of today's session, there'll be a survey that you'll get. Now, the purpose of this survey is to help us learn, help us improve from this series as we get into 2025 planning, and to hear any burning questions that you have that you would have loved us to cover this year to make next year even better. So, welcome. Appreciate your time today, James. And for those of you who have opened your emails this morning, you've also got the canvas. So if you remember and you've been with me for the last 9 weeks, you know that I love to apply the learning. So we don't just have brilliant speakers, we capture the goodness and we put it in our worksheet. So we call these the canvas. So if you've got that canvas, get it out in front of you. If not, there'll be time to look at it later. So welcome, James MacDonald. Kia ora. So exciting to have you with us today. I am going to hand over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. And thanks everyone for attending today. Tracy's put together a nice little intro slide there, but I'll give you a bit of a, in my words, lack of dot point version of who I am and my story to date. So quick opener. The speech today is on resilience. I am here at home working from home today because I've got a 6-year-old off work sick. So off school sick even. So she's at home. So if you do see a little 6-year-old pop her head in at some point or come asking me for food, medicine or a drink or to update her Netflix, apologies. But that's the sort of world we're living in at the moment. And that's the world we all live in as small business owners and having to be resilient and get through things. But what am I going to talk about today? Essentially, I'm going to talk through my experience handling the pandemic over the past 4 years. I've worked with over 50 businesses in the past 4 years. We do technology recruitment for them. So just speaking about sort of essentially my experience working through that, managing my business through that, but also some of the learnings I've learned from some of the clients I've worked with and who's managed it best. The fact that anyone is still in small business today, after everything we've been through over the past 4 or 5 years, we're talking international supply chain issues, we're talking natural disasters, we're talking the pandemic, lockdowns, inflation, constant talk of a recession, economic instability. Like the fact that anyone is still in business in the small business world at the moment is a pretty good indication that you are resilient. So first pat on the back to you. I'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but I think that is something that as small business owners, we really need to do a better job of, and that is celebrating the wins. And whether that win is just as a small business, actually just surviving the last 4 or 5 years, that's an achievement in itself. There's lots of businesses that have gone under in that last 4 or 5 year period, some through no fault of their own. But if you're a small business owner and you've survived the last 4 or 5 years, I think it is something to actually acknowledge and celebrate. We're getting a daily grind in the weeds of a business day in, day out. And for us, small business owners, we don't celebrate the wins enough. So I think, hey, the fact that you're here today as a small business owner, if you're still running your business, you're in business, I think, A, you've shown some resilience, and then B, I think that you should take some time to celebrate that.
I was going to jump in and go, if anyone wants to drop in the chat their big wins of late, we'd love to get some good vibes going. So what are you most proud of right now? Drop it in the chat. I'd love to hear. And then I'm going to let James continue his narrative, his story.
Yeah, no worries, Trace. Feel free to jump in at any time and help me drive these slides. I'll go on to the next one whenever you get a chance. So just give it a bit of overview, just so you've got some context in who I am. So my life was a cruisy one. So I was working in a marketing job, living in Sydney. My wife and I were a dual income family. We had plenty of cash, nice dinners, plenty of time to play golf on the weekends. And then we discovered we're expecting our first child. So we moved up to the Central Coast, bought a house. We had a new baby boy and life was pretty sweet. But then the sleepless nights kicked in. The commute to Sydney from the Central Coast kicked in, leaving in the dark, getting home in the dark. That all kicked in. Living with a mortgage on a single income, that kicked in. Life was no longer so sweet. So I needed a change. And I not only changed jobs, but I changed careers. So after 9 years in marketing, I found myself working in technology recruitment. So I had to learn a new skill. And I did reasonably well at that. And in about 3 weeks before our third child was born, I actually, after doing 3 years of technology recruitment, went out on my own, started my own business. And I built that business from a solo operator over a 2-year period to being a team of 4. And then I joined forces with my biggest competitor. And then between her and I, we built the business to $8 million in revenue. We had a team of 14, and pretty much everything I touched over that 2-3 year period turned to gold. I could not do any wrong. I bought a new house, plenty of disposable cash. Life was great. And just for context, how we make money, we're in technology recruitment. So a company comes to us, they need to fill a technology job, might be a software developer, project manager. We'll help them find that people, introduce them, help manage that whole process, and then we take a fee for that. So that's the sort of the market that we operate. So back to the story. So life was rosy. We were making plenty of cash and life was great. We had a really strong team. And then the whole technology market crashed. So it sort of started in the US. You heard of the Twitter, Amazon, Google, Facebook. They all started layoffs. 4 of our top 6 clients in Australia all stopped hiring. The VC market in Australia started tied up. That whole flow from what was happening in the US flowed into Australia. You had Atlassian, probably the poster child for all technology businesses in Australia. They went from hiring, I think it was 100,000 people across Australia fully remote, to actually making redundancy. So that flipped on its head. On top of that, you had a shaky economic environment. You had some real hesitancy in the market for Australian companies to be investing. So everything I touched no longer turned to gold. I had some really sleepless nights. I tried and failed at meditation. I drank too much. It was really stressful. It was a really stressful time. So I went from that whole market flipping itself on a head. But in the end, we've come out of that the last 18 months. We've survived that. We're probably in a better position now than we've ever been. So essentially what I'm going to try to do today, I'm not an expert in many things, but what I can actually talk to you about is our experience working through that period and some of the lessons I learned through that, and also some of the lessons I learned off other clients. So Tracy, if we don't mind flipping it over to the next one. Before I actually dig into the business resilience side of everything today, I thought I'd just actually dig into the individual resilience side, because essentially as a small business owner, for most of us, the business is solely reliant on us. So we try to build our business, scale our team, scale our processes. Like that's the objective of a business, right? Is to make it beyond you. But for many of us, it's still reliant on our knowledge, our reputations, our relationships. And the business doesn't function without you. Or probably even better spoke, the business functions better with a better version of you there. And for us as small business owners, over the last few years, we've faced some really stressful times. So there's a book here that first book that I would make a recommendation of today. It's called The Resilience Project by Hugh Van Cuylenburg. And he actually makes mention of that 29% of people that face a traumatic event experience symptoms of anxiety, and 25% experience symptoms of depression. What's a traumatic event? Well, I guess we all have different versions of that, but I guess what you could say for a lot of small business owners over the last couple of years, it would be considered a traumatic event. So it'd be very real for a lot of small business owners to actually have faced some form of anxiety or depression over those years. And you're not alone. As the stats say, there's over 29% anxiety and 25% depression. And those stats were from a few years ago before these pandemics really flowed on. So I think the fact that before we actually look at business resilience, we need to be the best of ourselves. So if we're the best version of ourselves, then we can actually help the business be the best version of itself. So I thought I'd start here with just some individual resilience. So Trace, if you don't mind hitting the next slide. This is just a quote from the book, and it's probably one of the best quotes I found. And it's self-compassion is an essential component of resilience and allows us to be kind to ourselves in times of struggle. I know myself, and I know a lot of other small business owners that I've spoken to aren't kind to ourselves. I think you go through some tough times, you blame yourself for different situations. Sometimes it's lucky or unlucky the situation you are. But I think being self-compassionate to ourselves is a really good starting point to actually start to build that resilience. So again, as I mentioned, the book that I'm referencing here is it's called The Resilience Project. It's by the Australian author Hugh Van Cuylenburg. And he really overall tackles 3 key themes. And I'll just touch on those 3 key themes before I get into the business resilience. But the 3 themes that I've found super helpful. And I've actually shared this book with a number of other small business owners, and they've bounced off that with me as well. Next slide, please, Chase. The first one's gratitude. So that his three principles come under the overarching title GEM, G-E-M. First G stands for gratitude. Um, there's probably not, if you've read any sort of self-help book or business book of late, definitely in the self-help sort of space, there's a lot of talk about gratitude. Gratitude, it can be overarching, but the best way that I've actually found use of gratitude, in small business, you can find things really difficult. You find yourself in really difficult situations. But if you can change that point of perception for yourself, you can actually just sort of get through it. So from a gratitude perspective, there's times where I've actually found it, I'm in a reasonably difficult position at work, I'm dealing with a difficult client. Taking that step back and actually thinking where you're at in life and gratitude. So the fact that we're, as small business owners in Australia, and have the opportunity to build our own business, is a very fortunate position to be in. So yes, it can be stressful, but we put ourselves in that position. We're fortunate to be in that position. So just being grateful for that. It doesn't mean you can't, be disappointed at the situation, but just being grateful for the position you're in, being grateful for the fact that you do have a roof over your head or a job that you can actually get employed or get paid for. So I think at a high level, I've found gratitude really good as just changing that point of reference. And even if that's for a slight moment, it gets you out of a funk, and it can get you into a position where you can start to actually make better decisions. The second point in Hugh's thing is empathy. Empathy, the best part again, I think I've found for it is like being empathetic to other people's situations. So if you're a cafe owner and you've got a rude customer that comes in, actually being empathetic to the situation they're in. So there's a lot of mental health issues going around at the moment. There's a lot of people out there struggling, especially with the economy as it is right now. And a lot of people's unhappiness or aggression internally comes out externally. So them being aggressive to you as a business owner, them being aggressive might be a stakeholder, shareholder, might be somebody in your supply chain really turning the screws on you. Actually trying to be empathetic onto where they're coming from as well can just change your perception. So I think just understanding where other people are coming from, like that empathy and kindness piece, it really overlaps there. And I think again, for me, it's been really helpful. It's not just some airy fairy crap. I think being empathetic, sorry, and having some empathy for other people can really change that point of reference and actually help you understand where other people are coming from. And the last one is mindfulness. So again, I think anyone that's looked at any form of self-help has probably come across mindfulness or meditation. Hey, I'm a small business owner, and if I try to sit down, close my eyes and breathe or make a chant or do some form of meditation, I've always struggled with it. I have some form of ADHD. I think a lot of small business owners are really wired and they struggle to turn their brains off. Hey, if you've never tried meditation, I definitely recommend trying one of the apps. So Waking Up with Sam Harris has been a really good one. Calm and Headspace are probably two of the biggest ones in Australia as well. I'd definitely try one of those three apps if you've never tried meditation before. But for me, it didn't work. But where I came out from mindfulness, what worked for me is finding I used exercise for that. So I had a really stressful day, many days at work, come home, instead of being on the way home and thinking about, oh, I might hit a glass of wine or two, going to a boxing session, training for an hour where you're present in that situation. So whether it be running, or for me, it was a boxing session. I was learning a new skill. I was having to work hard, and then I wasn't thinking about work. And then at the end of that hour, I'll come out of there fresh mind and feel significantly better about the situation. So for mindfulness is about just trying to be present. So I don't know what it is for any of you, like individual. I think it is an individual thing, but there are apps out there that are proven. For me, was exercise. I think it's really important to find that thing, because being able to just calm our minds and actually give ourselves some peace of mind as a small business owner, I think is really important. Small business is full on, right? It's really tough to turn that off. It's tough to turn that off at the end of the day. So being able to find a practice that can help you change your position and that emotion, I think is really helpful.
I'm going to jump in there. Deliberateness is really helpful. I'm loving that people are, thanks, Lenore, for asking, if anyone's got any strategies that they'd love to share with everyone today, we'd love to hear from you. And yeah, Melanie, thank you. Exercise keeps me sane too. And I ended up being the beat the feet. So do the trail run, try and do walking meetings, just for me, I made mindfulness became being deliberate, and ceramics, playing with clay. That's a very different one. For some folks, it's cooking. It's like, what is it? Out of your head into your body. What can you get? What can you use to get into your body instead of going round and round in circles? And I'm going to chuck it back over to you, James. Business
Yeah,
resilience.
I agree. And hey, I'm all up for hearing any other people's responses in there. I'm always up for learning from other people's experiences as well. So yeah, for me, as I said, I found exercise to be really, really beneficial for me because trying to turn my mind off very challenging. All right, we'll kick into the seven pillars of business resilience. So I didn't have an overall framework with this, but when trying to put this presentation together, I came across this seven pillars of business resilience by Ursula Nuber. I'll essentially, the 7 points here: optimism, acceptance, solution orientation, leaving the role of victim, taking ownership, network orientation, and future planning. I've got a couple of slides. I've got one slide on each of these. I reckon I can wrap up this whole bit in probably like 10 to 15 minutes at tops, and just give you an overview of both what I've found really beneficial for each of these stages, because I do think this framework really works for working through challenging situations and having resilience. What I found super helpful, my experiences through it, and again, I'm just going to lean on my experiences and what I've learned through this period, and I'll share some of that with you. And I reckon we can wrap this up in probably 10 to 15. So
Yes. Look forward to people's questions. So if something triggers you while we're talking, let's jump in and pop it in the Q&A, please.
yeah, for sure.
Over to you, James.
All right. I'll start with a quote here, and I'll lead in the second book recommendation for today. But it is Simon Sinek's "Start with Why." So, working hard for something we do not care about we do not care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. So, second book recommendation for today is Simon Sinek's "Start with Why." The reason being, optimism is the first part of this process. So it's the fuel in the tank. So when the pandemic hit, it was tough, right? But guess what? The optimists, they're the ones that have seen the silver linings. They pivoted, they innovated, they thrived. You've seen some people actually nailed the pandemic and actually succeeded through that. It's about seeing that glass half full. So for me, optimism comes from a strong why. So, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of small businesses. It's like, so why did you get into small business? Like, my why isn't succinct, but it's a measure of something around being able to provide for my wife and family, having the flexibility to actually be there for my kids' sporting events, for my kids' school events, for my kids' award ceremonies, being able to be there for my wife in and around her responsibilities and what she needs to do in life. So having that flexibility. And then having the opportunity to create. And I'll get back to that in a sec. And the last one for me was I don't like to be managed. I've never liked being managed. And it was one of the reasons I went out on my own. Maybe I had some board managers at some point in my life. I'm not sure, but I haven't liked that. I like the ability to actually create and have ownership myself. And I think a lot of other small business owners are the same. So, but hey, small business is also difficult, right? There's times where I've definitely thought many a times it would be nice to have a government job, rock up at 9:01 or maybe 8:59 and leave at 5:01 and not think about work for the rest of the time. Go home, not stressed out, don't lay in bed thinking about work at night. And hey, that has come across my mind many, many a times. But what flips me is I'm just not wired that way. Like I couldn't do that. I couldn't get satisfaction out of that longer term. And I think a lot of small business owners that I've spoken to are the same. So you get energy from creating your own thing. So again, if you do want to put anything in the chat around like how you get that energy and that creation, I think a lot of us are wired in the very same way. And you get that independence of not having to report to somebody or being able to do your own thing. So I think for a lot of us, like having that why and understanding that why and being able to lean on that is really important. So when shit gets tough, having a strong why to lean on, I found it really powerful. So when you feel positive about your why, it's easy to think more positively about the business. It's easier to actually push through those tougher times and get what's done, needs to get done. It's not going to be easy, but you're doing it for a reason. And being able to have that really strong why as a backbone, I think is really important. I found it beneficial. I know a lot of the successful business owners I know have found that really beneficial as well. So, hey, if you've never checked out Simon's book or his TED Talk. TED Talk's really short. It's got, I know, multiple millions of views. I'd definitely give that a crack. And if you've never actually thought about the reason why you're in business, I definitely would. Next slide, please, Trace. And this is just a little bit more insights on my why. So picture on the left, last year, I think during the pandemic, as I said, I got pretty stressed out. I probably drank too much, probably ate too much crap, and I didn't exercise enough. So I signed myself up to learn boxing. And I did a corporate fighter event. It was learning a new skill, and it forced me to exercise, clean my diet up. It was really great for me, like mentally. I don't think I'm going to have too many more fights, but I've now signed up for a marathon, which is equally crazy. But again, just having something to work on outside of work, from a fitness and health perspective, has been really beneficial. So that's my wife and I. And on the right, the one in the middle, she's the one currently at home sick. She'll probably be in for some food soon. And the other two, this was them setting up their little a cake and art stall that they were doing. So that's my why. So like, hey, when life gets stressful, being able to come back to this, or business gets stressful, come back to this. This is why I'm doing it. I've found that really, really beneficial for me.
Love that second generation small business ownership happening there.
I think one of my mates come along and gave him $50 for a couple of cookies. So I think their understanding of small business is a little bit difficult, a little bit different and unrealistic, but they loved it. Next one, again, I'm going to start with a quote. What such a man needs is not courage, but nerve control, cool-headedness. This he can only get by practice. So acceptance, it's acceptance. It's a big part of being resilient as a small business owner. So, and you just get through that through practice, being in this tough situation time and time again. And I think that's a really good quote. It actually comes from a book I'll get to in a second. But acceptance is actually things are going to go sideways. Small business, we can either deny it or we can deal with it, right? It's about facing the music. It's about actually not just getting too down in the situation, but getting going. So the pandemic was an interesting one for us. Like as a small business, like we actually thrived through the first lockdown. We do technology recruitment. Companies were investing in tech, remote work became the new normal. Technology professionals were in demand. We had our best quarter ever during the lockdown, and then our best 12 months during the pandemic. But if we had our times again, when things change, I probably didn't move quick enough. So if I had my time again, I'd make decisions earlier. So I would have embraced like the acceptance that the market had changed and our business and our budgets were no longer aligned. So if I would have done that a bit earlier, we would have definitely saved some money, not lost as much money in some of our bad months, and just accepting the situation we're in. I was, maybe hoping for things to change, or just not accepting the fact that they had changed. So this was the new normal, and we had to make some changes. So we did spend some significant time with our accountants during that period, and we refined our budget, and we had to make some layoffs, which were really difficult, and we had to cut costs. But eventually I did come to that place of acceptance and had to make those things. So before you can actually, and we'll get to the next point in a second, which is actually making some solutions to that, but accepting the situation you're in. I think if we put our head in the sand and we think, okay, things are going to change without us doing anything, or hey, the business isn't as bad as what it is without actually looking at the financials, you can get yourself in a really tough situation. So accepting this position we're in, let's look at the data, let's look at where we're at, and then we can move forward to Tracy, solution orientation. Again, I'm going to start with a quote: persist and resist. Persist in your efforts, resist in giving into distraction, discouragement, and disorder. So this quote comes from a book called The Obstacle is the Way. It's a book by Ryan Holiday, and what it is in the title. So it's essentially, it does lean on stoicism, but it's really about looking at the obstacle and then working through it, like accepting what it is and then working through it. And it's probably one of my favorite books, if not my favorite book. It's a pretty easy read, I guess. It's pretty old now. It's probably been around for nearly 10 years, but it's sold multiple millions of copies. So again, highly recommend it. I found it a really enjoyable read as well. But solution orientation, it's where the magic happens. So it's not if problems will happen. We all face problems. They're going to happen in small business as part of who we are. Like if you're stuck in traffic, you find a new route. If your product's not selling, you change your strategy. So they come up every day. Not a day goes by where in small business, things don't go perfectly, right? Some are small problems, some are life-changing problems. But for us in our business, it was really about then, okay, accept where we're at. Let's lean back into what we did really well. So what did we do better than anyone else? So we cut away from the extra projects. We just launched a secondary brand called NewyTechPeople. We'd hired a new marketing manager. He was probably our most expensive staff member at that time. We allocated him a six-figure marketing budget. So we're really invested in this going properly. If we're going to do it, let's do it properly. So to new marketing manager, big budget to launch and build that brand. Then the market changed. So we had to actually put that project on pause. Unfortunately, we had to let the marketing manager go and cut that marketing budget. So that hurt. It hurt me significantly to have to let him go 6 months, into his tenure. No fault of his own. The market had changed. It's a situation we're in. But it's what needed to happen for us. It needed to be a budget realignment. Like a budget realignment was our biggest change. So we went back and we focused on what got us to that point in our business. So we focused on our most loyal clients. Who are the relationships that have got us to our point in the time? Focus on just building those up again, really reinforcing who are those best relationships. What do we do well? Let's do the basics really well, time and time and time again. We couldn't change the market. We just had to ride it out, but we needed to reduce our costs. And it hurt. But we're better off for it. Next one, please, Trace. This next one is a tough one. It's a tough one for everyone, I think. Leaving the role of victim. So, small business is tough, right? And it can feel like the world's against you sometimes. It can feel like the market's against you. It can feel like one thing after another. There's businesses that had to deal with a natural disaster straight into the pandemic, straight into something else. Like, it can suck. It can really suck. But putting that to the side, leaving that role of victim to the side, if we play the victim the whole time as a small business owner, we're not actually going to be able to move through it. So, again, I'll go back to this quote, and this is probably one of the best quotes I try to come back to time and time and time again. And we suffer more in our imagination than in reality. So I come back to this quote so many times. Like, I'd had sleepless nights, nights before having to lay someone off. I had to lay off, one of my longest standing employees. I felt horrible about it. I felt shit. But we're in a position where if I didn't do that, I was actually going to hurt the rest of the business. So I was laying in bed. I was having sleepless nights. Like, what if they hate me? Like, I've failed them. What if they lose their house? What if they cannot get another job? But you know what happened? None of that actually happened. I actually I'd worked myself up with these what ifs. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And it didn't play out that way. I was honest. I was empathetic to the situation that I was in. I actually, and it happened a couple of times, let them know that, this is where we're at. I'll do everything I can support you going forward. And you know what happened? Not one of those things. Not one of those people was without a house. Not one of those people was without a job. They've moved on to, other opportunities. So I think it's one of those things in our mind, like as a victim, we can get in our own heads and we can just be thinking about what ifs all the time. So I think one of the things for us as business owners is actually just trying to play in the reality. This is a situation we're in, and let's not suffer more in our own heads about what ifs and what may happen, and actually just deal with the actual situation that's there. Next one, talking about hard books. Brene Brown's I define a leader as anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people, processes, and the courage to develop that potential. So if you're looking for a good book on leadership, but a very difficult book to implement, I think Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. Again, Brene Brown's got a Netflix documentary as well, and a couple of TED Talks. So, hey, if books aren't for you, I'd definitely lead in one of them. I think Brene Brown speaks really, really strongly to actually leadership. But it's not easy to actually implement. It does involve having a lot of hard conversations, and those hard conversations are really challenging. So yeah, if you go backwards slide, please, Trace. So leaving that role of the victim, taking responsibility. So like ownership and accountability, I think is the role of a leader, the role of a small business owner. So when things don't go as planned, we can't go pointing fingers. We've actually just got to point the farm at ourselves and actually accept, hey, we're the ones that have actually got to deal with this. So the way I have a look at it, I'm like, hey, some of the decisions I made personally, like hurt our financial position of our business. I'd made some wrong hires. I also overspent from a marketing perspective, overspent from a systems perspective. But the best representation for us, if I can give an example, was we actually just shared the financial position of the business with our employees, with our full staff, laid the numbers pretty bare, and just said, hey, here's where we're currently at, and here's what we're going to do to get through it. It gave all of them some more context into where we're at. So if you're laying people off and other people are friends with or the other employees and they don't know why, or they've got no context around that, it can be really challenging for them. So for us, and just taking some ownership of like, here's where we're at, and here's what we're going to do to get through it, I found really, beneficial in hindsight. So if I can do any, if I can, provide any advice around that leadership part, is just taking responsibility for the situation you're in, and then just providing context and helping lead those people through that. We're getting towards the end as well. I think we've got 2 to go. This next one, I think Tracy's a big believer in this one. I was talking to her the other day about this, but again, I'll start with a quote. I believe that your social capital, or your ability to build a network of authentic, personal, and professional relationships, not your financial capital, is the most important asset in your portfolio. So I think this is like the secret sauce in business. I think it's the secret sauce in, nearly life to an extent, but it's like you're only as strong as your network. So it's your community, your collaboration, your connection. So who's on your speed dial when things get tough? So building a network, I think, before you need it and nurturing it is really important. So like whether it be from a mental health perspective, small business gets tough, right? Who do you have to call on? Really close friends or family or whoever it might be to have that conversation you can truly confide in. Like if you don't have that, I think it'd be something really, it might be a therapist, it might be somebody else that you can really lean into. I think from a personal perspective, that's massive. I think from a small business perspective, having a network of other small business owners that you can lean on or discuss the situations you're going through. Like if you don't have that, definitely look at like networking events or other potential meetups that you can actually network with other small business owners, because there's a lot of times what we're going through, we get in our own head with, we think we're the only ones going through it, but other people have been through the same situation before and they've got the answer for you on how to get through it, or they can at least just bounce off you and let you know, yeah, I'm going through the same thing. It's tough, right? And you can actually just acknowledge that. And then third part, I think it's that professional network. So I can't count the amount of stress a really good accountant and a really good lawyer has saved us. So from a cash flow position, from a tax position, from just a finance position in general, having a really good accountant that you can actually lean on, I found massively important, and they've actually really guided us through some good decision making. And then a lawyer. I don't know if there's many small businesses that have been in any legal situations. It's not fun. They're quite scary when you've got no knowledge of the legal system or knowledge of the ins and outs. You get a legal letter from, from a particular situation, you don't know what to do. Call a lawyer if you've got a good lawyer on call. They deal with this stuff day in day out, and they can let you know. They can just give you the confidence that, hey, this is the situation that you're in. It either does matter or it doesn't matter. Or if it does, like how we're actually going to get through it. And you've got that person to lean on. So I think that professional network for us, the 2 most important ones was, legal and accountancy. I'd definitely find that, try and, find that little network that you can lean on. So again, personal network, professional network, and then that network of, professional bodies that you could lean on. Then the last part of this 7-pillar process. So we've gone through, we've accepted the situation, we're working on the problem, we're actually putting ourselves in the position of actually doing it with the strong people, is actually putting some plans together for the future. As a small business owner, I did a Bachelor of Business back in the days, and then I read textbook on textbook on you have to have a marketing plan, you have to have a business plan, you have to have everything. I've always hated it. I've always been a believer on doing the work in the business is better than talking about or planning to do the work in the business with a business plan. I've always figured that planning about doing the work is not as good as actually doing the work. And hey, it can happen, right? In small business, just getting your hands dirty, getting stuff done can move you ahead. But what I've learned is taking some time to actually work on the business rather than in the business. For me at the moment, it's about once a quarter. It's about once a quarter, just sitting back, having a look at, hey, what do we want to achieve for the next quarter? How did we achieve last quarter? And having a look at that, I think is a really beneficial position to be in. For us, probably budget planning was the biggest one. At the end of each month, does our budget line up with what we planned? No. things change, right? Month in, month out, there's a lot of things outside of your control, but it gives you a really good indication on here's what we planned, here's what our actuals were, and why are they different? Do we have a really good month? How can we do more of that? Hey, if we had a bad month, do we need to change our cost controls for the next, month, quarter, whatever it might be? But budget planning, I found, again, it's not been a forte of mine. It's not something I lean into. I like building, I like creating, I like marketing, I like growing. I don't like planning for the sake of planning, but I think it is really beneficial, even if it's at a high level, even if it's a one-page business plan, even if it's a rough budget that you're going to work at from a yearly perspective and break it down by quarter, by month, and just actually tracking that. And again, I still don't believe you need that 20-page business plan, but I think having those little goals for each quarter, and each quarter, each half year, it can be a way to actually celebrate our wins. So I touched on it right at the start. I think as small business owners, we can get in the weeds. Sometimes we can get in like a really challenging. We can get in the dirt. You're facing some challenges day in, day out, and without actually putting some goals in mind, and they don't need to be hard copy goals, they don't need to be a 50 of them, but just having some, what does success look like, and achieving them and celebrating them. You can be grindy, small business.
I'm going to catch that brief and go, thank you. I am going to take you through a planning process now.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much, James, for your wisdom and perspectives on what I call adaptive leadership, which is how do we lead in an agile way where we can respond to what the market is doing. I'm really grateful for you sharing your lived experience and your really practical and pragmatic look at what's possible, but also giving us some inspiration for some reading, because I know James has shared some brilliant books, and thank you, Lenore, for sharing the links to those books as we've been tracking along. I feel like my Audible playlist is going to be downloaded for my next commute, so I now know what I'm going to be listening to. Thank you for sharing those points of inspiration. And the resilience roadmap. We took the resilience roadmap, and one of the things we aim to do here each week with Reboot is to give you a worksheet to capture the goodness. So this week's canvas is based on James' philosophy around how you can grow in an adaptive manner to get through this period and onto FY25. So each of the sections of this worksheet really comes from those 7 pillars. So optimism. So a little provocation here to write down some positive things. I'm going to take you through one I've done before today. Acceptance. What are those challenges? How do we get solution orientation? How do we get rid of the victim mindset? How am I going to take responsibility? What about my networks? And then what's my future forward FY25, next financial year coming up in 6 sleeps or less if you sleep. Here we go. So here's an example of one that I completed with a friend of mine who owns a cafe in Sydney. And she told me the 3 things that happened in her business. So she managed to launch a new brekkie menu. She got some good feedback on some social media she'd done, and it was the anniversary. So they did a special free coffee day to celebrate their 5 years in trading. And what she noticed was that it had boosted morale. Not only did it make customers feel good, she actually had smiling staff, and it made her feel really connected to the local community and just good vibes all around. So that was sort of helping her reframe some of the things that were going on. Now, it wasn't roses last week. They had a supplier issue, which meant there weren't bananas, and they were supposed to be doing banana bread. So that kind of meant a duck and weave moment. No bananas, no banana bread. And so there was a challenge with the supplier, and what she's done is she adapted the menu. So she came up with a new strategy and something based on the ingredients she had to hand. So she just went, I can get cross, I can get angry, or I can get going. And so she took on the acceptance as an angle. The solutions orientation. So one of the problems that she was facing was around the foot traffic. So it's winter here in Sydney. It's been a bit rainy, a bit cold, a bit bleak. And it means that her foot traffic has been really patchy because she's like a cafe hatch. So there's not a lot of coverage. But what she's been looking at is some opportunities to improve her weekday traffic flow. So she noticed that there were a lot of businesses that had come back that are in the offices nearby. So she's thinking about putting a loyalty program and a lunch menu together. She's been thinking about putting some discounts together and looking at how she can encourage customers to continue to come. So that was her solution orientation cap on. Then we spoke, and I felt like this was tough love. And so, what I've appreciated about James's inspiration today is if we don't name what we're facing or feeling, we can't overcome it. So, yes, she had felt helpless about the weather. And she gave me the quote that Sydney had had, 1,000 mils of rain. It was like living in Darwin, and it was unseasonal. And it's like, but she can't do anything about the rain. What can she do? Well, she looked at how she could actually start to bring people to the side of her shop and reorganize some of the spaces. And she's put some card games, some board games, some picture books for kids in the hope that people might just go, oh, that looks a bit cozy. So she's worked on her experience design and her retail. And if you remember Nancy, when she was with us talking about inviting retail environments, she took on some of that inspiration. And then the taking responsibility, she did not like this one, but we talked about it a lot, which was how was she involved in the success and failure of what's happened in the last few weeks. So it was her idea to put a photo contest together, and she worked hard to promote it, but she had launched a new menu item and it bombed. And she felt that she could have done a little bit more to research the new menu edition before she launched it. And so she was really, honest with herself and said, okay, marketing, great, can drive engagement. New products need a little bit more test and learn, a little bit more experimentation rather than just going all in and ordering ingredients for more than we were able to sell. So social capital, this was something she hadn't used that word before, but she understood about the idea of participating with her community. So she was like, okay, so who are the individuals that really stabilize my network? My supplier, my business neighbor, that there's this woman called Georgie who does great events, and the social media influencer that loves to come in and just spend hours taking photos. So there are three people that could really be leveraged to help her cafe. And she sort of documented what are the different things that she could do to take advantage of these great people in her network. And then finally, we ducked into planning for next year. So yes, the challenges, ingredient costs. You may have heard about the egg shortage. She's worried about the egg shortage. Competition from other cafes and venues, and maintaining customer loyalty. So keeping her customers coming back. And so she's got some strategies and some plans. So sitting down with her suppliers, thinking about how she can create differentiation and enjoying the up of last week's celebration to talk with her team about service and what great service looks like. And I've loved James's provocation today that everyone's got a sack of spuds. So actually talking to her team about having compassion and empathy for customers when they come in with their scowly, growly face and they ask for a coffee, that's not about the cafe, it's about that person. So I'm looking forward to hearing her perspectives on that tip. And then finally, wanting to grab some of those lessons. So she'd watched Reboot 24 and she's like, there are some episodes that I can go back to dig in to help me with my 2025 planning. So taking on this resilience canvas, she's going to rewatch the episode that Merlin did on customer engagement and loyalty, Nancy's retail ideas, and Emma LaRosso's social media marketing techniques were things that she called out when we did a bit of a brainstorm. And then this is how her Business 25 plan looks. So I hope that that's helped you think about how you might take the canvas and the inspiration from today and really land it to prepare you for next year. So we are going to jump in and take some questions. Thank you very much, James. And thank you everyone for staying with me this afternoon. I have got some good questions over here and I'm just going to jump in. A very specific and practical question, James, which is if you're looking for an accountant and trying to find the right person for a small business, what are some tips on finding a good accountant or a good lawyer to build that support from a network perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, right? If you don't actually know a good lawyer or a good accountant, Google and the rest of it can lead you down a tough path. For us, it came from referrals. We met our accountants at a couple of networking events. I used to do quite a bit of work in the startup scene, and startup networking events. And these accountants actually were there at most of those events, and they were supporting a lot of those startup events. And I spoke to a couple of other people that used them as an accountants, and they gave really strong referrals. So I think finding somebody that has a reputation for doing or working with businesses similar to yourselves can be really helpful. And referrals is the other one. So for us, yeah, it came through networking event and strong referrals. So I think that's, otherwise it is a really hard thing to actually uh, try to work out in a first meeting, right? They can put some good slides in front of you, but I think referrals, and if you need to do some reference checks, ask them for, a couple of references of other companies they've worked with that are most similar to you, and whether you can have a 5-minute conversation with any of those other clients. I think getting an actual real world experience on somebody else that's worked with them can be super beneficial.
Thank you. I've got another one, which is about how to say goodbye to the victim mindset. Thank you, Millie. That's a really tough question to ask. So Millie's looking for some advice on which of the pillars in the stack, was it victim mindset? Was it finding optimism? Which of the pillars was the hardest one for you to take on? And
Yeah, I think for me it was it was probably acceptance or victim mindset. Probably acceptance to start with. Definitely, like as I was working through it, accepting that, hey, everything I touched for a while actually turned to gold, and then I no longer did. And maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was, or maybe the business I built wasn't as strong as it was, or yeah, just some tough internal conversations around that. So just accepting the situation that it was. Once I did get work through that, yeah, it allows the rest of that to flow. And as I said, I wasn't specifically working through this 7-step framework as I went through it. But it made a lot of sense to me when I came across it. And once you've got that acceptance page, moving through it, leaving the victim mindset, I think, is a challenging one as well. But there is a lot of information out there from psychologists and Helpline and things like that, because victim mindset can, not be only through business, but there's people in victim situations throughout life. So I think I wouldn't say I'm the most qualified person to actually give advice on that. I think there's probably better resources online or other people.
I appreciate your lived experience and your reflection. So thank you. And
Yeah.
it's one of the things that, we can deliver practice-based content, right? So
Yeah.
everyone wants to dial in to talk about small business, marketing, social media, sales. But the simple truth is, as micro businesses and small businesses and businesses with tiny teams, typically the buck stops with us. And if we're not operating at our best, if we're not able to create the behavior that we want our teams to display, it doesn't matter how much brilliant TikTok skills I train you on, the business rate of survival will be moderated by how you're going as a human.
Yeah.
And I think it's been wonderful to have your perspective on that, and also the growth curve that you've been on, which is the resizing, the right sizing, and then the regrowth. So thank you for the rebooting, maybe I should have said. I have another good question for you. So what strategies, so this is actually a talent question. What strategies can small businesses use to attract talent in a competitive job market? We're hearing everyone's hunting for great people. So are we. James, give us some ideas on how to attract top talent.
Yeah, I think the one thing, and the word EVP gets thrown around quite a bit, but it's just like having a look at what is the point of difference.
mean? What does EVP mean?
Employee value proposition. So why should somebody come and work for you? Like in a competitive market, I think that's the biggest thing for actually employers to start to look at, is like, if people are in demand, why are they going to? Well, if people are in demand, there's a good chance they've got a current job. They're not unemployed. So why are they going to leave their current job to come and work for you? If you compete on salary and salary alone, which some companies do, but it's normally those bigger companies, it's not small businesses, it can get very expensive very quickly. So if you're not a small business and budget, is a constraint, why should somebody come and work for you? And it might be that you if you're in a supply chain that you only source ethically sourced ingredients. And that might really appeal to somebody who has a more of a green thumb or really cares about that environment. They're like, hey, I could work over here for a normal company, maybe a couple of dollars more, but over here is a company that more aligns with my values, and they might jump from their current company to come work for you. It might be that you provide somebody more flexibility than they otherwise have because they've got two children at home, and you're going to allow them to do the school pickup at 3 p.m. and then log back on at 3:15 and do the rest of their day. Or after they've put the kids to bed, they're going to do a couple of hours a night. And you're allowed to provide them that flexibility that somebody else might. So the EVP, and again, there's a bunch of information on how to try to work on your EVP, but really just taking your mindset and putting it in the mind of that potential employee that you want to hire. Why should they come and join you? And it shouldn't be on salary and salary alone. I think the salary part, you want to be competitive because most people, especially in this current environment, times are tough and, things are expensive at the moment. So I don't think you can offer massive unders these days, but really trying to think on what you could offer people that might be appealing, especially to your ideal target market, that they might not get elsewhere. And sometimes it's just being a little bit creative around that.
Love that. I have one last question, and it's again around a talent development. So I've taken on your advice, James, around the resilient mindset and adaptive leadership and leading from the front. How might I approach upskilling and reskilling my employees and myself to stay competitive for 25? So what are those kind of skills that I should be thinking about for me as the small business owner and leader of a team? And what sort of things should I be prioritizing for my people? We're a retail business.
Or retail business. I was going to say, give me some context. From a retail perspective, I think it's probably looking at marketing trends and what is happening. I guess what is happening in the market and how could you deal with that? There's obviously some cost pressures at the moment out there. So I think from a small business owner's perspective, just being the best leader that you can. So I think it goes from actual tactical skills to that leadership skills. You're only as strong as your team. Otherwise, it does become all reliant on you. And when it's all reliant on you, it's very challenging. So I think being the best leader you can. As I said, I think that Brene Brown book, Dare to Lead, is really, really strong. I think you being the best version of you is going to be the best leader for your company. From a upskilling perspective, it probably depends on what market you're in, but I think customer service never goes awry. I think in this day and age, people that have a really good customer experience, it actually stands out these days. Like that customer experience, if you go somewhere and you get served a coffee and they actually remember your name and serve you with a smile and have, when you're walking up there, they know your name, they know your order. Those little things, customer service really stands out these days. I think it's something that it sounds a little bit old school, but it's something we've moved away from. So like just being able to provide a really good experience that people remember you for. Referrals are phenomenal these days, like between Google reviews and just people actually talking in socials. People will talk and people will talk positively about you or negatively, depending on their experience. So I think that just working on customer experience. Otherwise, people are just going to go online, right?
Love it. Social capital. We used to say that word of mouth was the most powerful channel. And now we're not twigging that all of the things when we talk about social media and whatnot is actually just word of mouth distributed digitally. So working backwards and how might I generate excellent social capital? Great goal for 2025, people. That's all we have time for today. Thank you, James. Before I drop off, I wanted to thank everyone who's spent the last 9 weeks having lunch with me every Tuesday. I'm going to miss everyone, and I wanted to invite you to engage with the Reboot content, grab out your canvases, go through, have a watch party, get some of your friends together, people that you might have met on the chat here, and catch up and really start to unpack what matters to you in business now. Before we go, I am going to thank Lenore, for being our brilliant production lead for this series. Thank you so much, Lenore. And we will be dropping a link shortly to get our final pulse survey, if you can please complete that. I also wanted to acknowledge the City of Sydney and the support that they've provided together with Business New South Wales Service NSW. Without your funding, we couldn't put on programs like Reboot for small businesses. Thank you, everyone, and have a brilliant week ahead. Best of luck for a positive end of financial year and a kick goals for 2025. I look forward to seeing you back for Reboot 25. Take care, everyone, and thank you.